The wine struck me like a slap, cold and sticky as it splashed across my face and dripped down my blouse, soaking the thin fabric until it clung to my skin. Gasps rippled around the table, followed by a heavy silence that made every heartbeat feel like thunder in my chest. I didn't dare move. I could feel dozens of eyes digging into me, judging, ridiculing. The CEO's sister stood over me with the kind of smile only someone born untouchable could wear. "Did you really think you belonged here?" she whispered, low enough for only me to hear, her breath warm against my ear as the wine cooled on my cheeks. Her words cut deeper than the wine's sting. I wanted to wipe my face, to run, to scream, but my body betrayed me, frozen with shame. Around us, the elegant clinking of cutlery had stopped. Guests lowered their gazes, pretending not to see, terrified of siding with the wrong person. My throat tightened as humiliation swelled inside me. I was just the outsider, the girl foolish enough to be in this mansion, at this table. Then, a chair scraped sharply against the polished marble floor. He was standing, the CEO. His presence was magnetic, commanding every breath in the room. His dark eyes locked onto his sister with a weight that silenced even her cruel smirk. Slowly, he reached for a napkin, walked toward me, and handed it over. "Apologize," he said, his voice cold as steel. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her. "Or leave this house forever." Her smirk faltered, just barely, but enough for me to notice. The CEO's sister had never been told no in her life, and now her brother's voice was stripping the confidence from her one syllable at a time. She glanced around the table, seeking allies among the family members and elite guests who had once laughed with her. But no one moved. No one even breathed too loudly. All eyes were fixed on the man standing before her, his jaw set with the kind of authority that could end careers, fortunes, entire lives. "You're serious?" she whispered, a tremor betraying the facade of control. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The air was already charged, electric with the possibility that he might actually follow through with his threat. My fingers trembled as I clutched the napkin he'd handed me, unsure whether I should dab the wine from my face or simply wait. I had never seen anyone stand up for me before. Not like this. It felt unreal. She took a step back, her heels clicking too loudly against the marble floor. "She doesn't belong here," she tried again, her voice sharp with desperation. His response was measured, deliberate, and left no room for negotiation. "Apologize. Now." For a moment, I thought she might refuse and call his bluff. But then, her shoulder stiffened, and she turned to me with a hollow smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry," she muttered through clenched teeth. It wasn't real, but it was public, and it shifted something inside me. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to feel grateful or terrified. Because one thing was clear. This man wasn't protecting me out of kindness. Her forced apology hung in the air like a bitter perfume, cloying and insincere. I could feel the eyes of every guest burning into me, waiting to see how I would respond. My lips parted, but no sound came out. I didn't know what I was supposed to say. "It's fine." It wasn't. I was humiliated, but defiance would only paint a bigger target on my back. Before I could decide, he stepped closer, his presence a wall between me and his sister. "Leave," he said quietly to her, his voice like a blade. She flinched, clutching her wine glass as if it could shield her from the weight of his authority. "I didn't mean," I said, "leave." This time, there was no mistaking the finality. She set her glass down hard enough for it to crack, then swept out of the room with her pride dragging behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Slowly, I dabbed the napkin at my face, hands shaking so badly I could barely steady them. He turned to me then, his gaze softer, but no less intense. "You don't have to clean up their messes," he said, as if the words carried more meaning than the wine staining my clothes. My heart pounded. I wanted to ask why he defended me, but I couldn't find my voice. Instead, he leaned closer, his tone low enough for only me to hear. "From this moment on," he said, his eyes holding mine with unnerving certainty, You'll never be treated like this again. Not in this house. Not anywhere. I froze, breath catching in my throat, because I didn't understand what he meant or what was about to come next. The room gradually came back to life after she left, but the air still felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Murmurs spread across the table, cautious and restrained, as though they feared their words might be overheard. I wanted to disappear. My blouse was still damp, my hair stuck to my face, and every pair of eyes seemed to flicker in my direction with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. I didn't belong here. I never had. Yet, he had made me the center of attention, and now I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. My chair scraped softly as I rose, clutching the napkin to my chest like armor. I should go, I whispered, not sure if I was speaking to him or myself. But before I could take a single step, he moved. One long stride closed the distance between us, his presence towering, commanding. Stay, he said quietly. Yet it felt like a command no one dared disobey. My breath caught as his hand hovered just above my arm, close enough that I could feel the warmth of it, but not close enough to touch. You have nothing to be ashamed of, he added, his voice low, firm. I blinked up at him, confused and flustered. Why was he doing this? He was the CEO, the man who ruled entire empires with a single signature. I was no one. And yet, when he stepped aside and gestured for me to return to the table, I felt the sting of humiliation blur into something else. Something sharper, unfamiliar, and far more dangerous. I hesitated, my fingers clutching the back of the chair as if it might keep me steady. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave this place and never return. But his eyes, dark, unwavering, held me there. Please, he said softly, though his voice carried a weight that left no room for refusal. Reluctantly, I sat back down, my pulse racing as the others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Conversation resumed in clipped tones, but it was impossible to ignore the glances, the whispered questions. Who was I? Why had he defended me so fiercely? I couldn't answer those questions myself. I focused on the untouched plate in front of me, my appetite gone, my thoughts tangled in confusion. Then I felt it, the subtle warmth of his presence beside me. He had taken the seat to my right, his arm brushing mine as he leaned slightly closer. You're shaking, he murmured, his words so low they were meant only for me. I stiffened, quickly pulling my hands into my lap. I'm fine, I whispered, though my voice betrayed me. He studied me for a long moment before speaking again. No one will hurt you in this house, he said. Not while I'm here. My heart pounded in my ears. Why did he care? He didn't even know me. Or did he? I turned my head slowly, meeting his gaze for the first time since the wine incident. There was something in his eyes, something I couldn't name, that made my breath hitch. Why are you doing this? I asked before I could stop myself. His lips curved, not into a smile but something deeper. Because you're not who they think you are, he said. His words echoed in my head, louder than the clinking silverware and muted chatter around us. Not who they think you are. I didn't even know what that meant. My hands fidgeted in my lap, fingers twisting the damp napkin as I fought the urge to demand answers. But I couldn't. Not here, not in front of everyone. I don't understand, I whispered, my voice nearly lost in the hum of the dining room. He leaned closer, close enough that his breath brushed against my temple. You will, he said quietly. That was all. He didn't elaborate, and I couldn't read the expression on his face, part warning, part promise. Before I could ask more, a staff member entered the room, discreetly handing him a phone. He stood immediately, his hand brushing the back of my chair as he rose, steadying me even though I wasn't falling. Stay here. I'll be back, he murmured. And just like that, he was gone, leaving me with the judging eyes of his world boring into my skin. I felt small, utterly alone, and yet something inside me had shifted. He had stood up for me. He had seen me when no one else ever had. But why? I glanced toward the double doors he had just disappeared through, my mind spinning with questions. Around the table, whispers started again, sharper this time, tinged with speculation. "Why is she still here?" someone muttered. "She's not even." I rose abruptly, chair scraping the floor, and walked out of the room before I could hear the rest. My heart pounded as I stepped into the corridor, searching for him, because no matter how terrified I was, I needed to know the truth. The hallway was silent except for the rapid beat of my footsteps on the polished marble floor. I didn't even know where I was going. The mansion was a labyrinth of endless corridors and grand staircases. But I had to find him. Questions gnawed at me, clawing at my chest. Why had he defended me? Why did he look at me like he knew me when we'd barely spoken before tonight? I turned a corner too sharply and nearly collided with a housekeeper carrying a silver tray. "Sorry," I muttered, bowing quickly before rushing past. My damp blouse clung uncomfortably to my skin, the dried wine sticky and cold, but I barely felt it anymore. Every instinct told me I shouldn't be here, that someone like me didn't belong wandering these halls alone. But I couldn't go back to that table, not with their stares suffocating me. Then I heard it, his voice, low, firm, and laced with frustration, speaking to someone just beyond a set of heavy double doors. I stopped, my hand hovering over the brass handle, and listened. "I don't care what the board thinks," he was saying. "I won't let them treat her like that." My breath caught. Was he talking about me? "She doesn't even know the truth yet," another voice replied, softer but tense. There was a long pause, then his answer, each word deliberate. "She will. Tonight." My pulse raced as I stepped back from the door, my mind spinning. The truth? What truth? I had the sudden, dizzying realization that this was bigger than a dinner table insult. Something was unfolding around me, and I was at the center of it without even knowing why. I pressed my back against the cold wall, my breath shallow as I tried to make sense of what I had just heard. "She doesn't even know the truth yet." The words looped through my mind, each repetition heavier than the last. What truth could they possibly mean? My heart thudded painfully as I strained to catch every sound from the room beyond the doors. His voice came again, lower now, but edged with something I had never heard from him before. Fear. "If they find out before I can tell her, they'll destroy everything." My hands trembled, clutching the edges of my damp blouse. "They'll destroy everything? Who?" I felt like I was drowning in questions I couldn't answer. Suddenly, the handle of the double doors clicked, and I stumbled back just in time as they swung open. He stepped out, tall and striking against the light behind him, his sharp gaze sweeping the hall until it landed on me. I froze, caught like a thief in the act. His brows furrowed as he approached slowly, measuredly, until he was close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. "Were you listening?" he asked, voice low but laced with intensity. I shook my head too quickly, my pulse hammering in my ears. "No, I was just," he reached out, fingers brushing my wrist as if to steady me. But it felt more like a tether pulling me in. "Come with me," he said softly, though his grip was firm. "You deserve to know everything." And before I could argue, or even think, he was leading me down the corridor into a part of the house I had never seen before. He led me through a narrow hallway that felt completely different from the lavish spaces we had just left behind. The walls here were lined with old portraits, faces frozen in time, watching us as we passed. My pulse pounded louder with every step, and yet I couldn't bring myself to pull away. Something in his grip, steady but not harsh, kept me anchored. We stopped in front of a tall wooden door at the very end of the corridor. He turned the key, the lock clicking open with an echo that sent a shiver through me. "Where are we?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer, just pushed the door open and guided me inside. The room was dim, filled with the scent of polished wood and something faintly familiar, lavender maybe. I blinked as my eyes adjusted to the soft light. There was a large desk in the center, papers stacked neatly, and behind it, a wall covered in framed photographs. My breath caught when I saw one particular picture. It was me, younger, standing outside the orphanage where I had grown up, clutching a tattered backpack. My knees went weak. Why do you have this? I asked, my voice trembling. He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. Because I've known you far longer than you realize, he said softly. My heart slammed against my ribs. What are you talking about? He hesitated for a long moment before finally meeting my gaze. You're not just a guest in this house, he said, his voice heavy with meaning. This entire place, it was meant to be yours all along. The words didn't make sense. This place was meant to be yours all along. My throat tightened as I stared at him, shaking my head slowly. You're wrong, I whispered, though the picture of me on the wall felt like proof I couldn't ignore. I don't belong here. I never have. He stepped closer, his presence swallowing the space between us. You've always belonged here, he said quietly, as if the truth itself might break me. My chest heaved with a mixture of fear and disbelief. I don't understand. Why would you even say that? His gaze softened, but his jaw clenched like he was holding back years of secrets. Because this house, this company, everything you've been told you were too small to dream about, it was never theirs to begin with. I staggered back, my legs weak, hitting the edge of the desk. He followed, but didn't touch me, his voice dropping lower. Your parents, they built all of this, and when they were gone, they left it to you. But someone made sure you never knew. My heart stuttered painfully in my chest. That's impossible, I said, my voice breaking. I grew up with nothing. If what you're saying is true, then why did I spend my life cleaning floors while they lived like royalty? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened the drawer of the desk and pulled out a faded envelope sealed with wax. He held it out to me, his eyes full of quiet determination. Because they stole it from you, he said. And this is the proof that changes everything. My hands trembled as I reached for the envelope, its edges brittle with age. It felt heavier than paper should, as though it carried the weight of my entire life. Open it, he urged softly, his voice gentler now, almost afraid of how I might react. I hesitated, staring at the seal, a crest I had never seen before but somehow recognized deep in my bones. My thumb broke the wax, and I unfolded the yellowed letter inside. The handwriting was elegant, delicate, but the first line made my breath hitch. To our daughter, who will one day inherit everything we built. My vision blurred as I read the words again and again, as if repetition could make them less impossible. No, I whispered, shaking my head. This can't be real. They wouldn't have left me in that place, forgotten. My voice cracked. He stepped closer, careful not to touch me, his presence steady like a shield. They didn't forget you, he said firmly. You were taken from them, and when they died, the people who should have protected you took advantage instead. My knees nearly buckled, and I gripped the edge of the desk to stay upright. You're telling me they stole my life, I choked out. He nodded once, his eyes burning with quiet rage. They erased you so they could take everything. But I've spent years uncovering the truth, and now it's time for everyone else to know it too. I clutched the letter to my chest, my heart thundering, torn between disbelief and a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I stared at the letter clutched to my chest, the words still burning in my mind, louder than my own heartbeat. What do I even do with this? I whispered, my voice trembling. I'm nobody, they'll never believe me. He stepped closer, his gaze steady, his voice firm yet filled with an unfamiliar warmth. You're not nobody, he said, the words like a vow. You're the rightful owner of everything they've tried to steal, and they will believe you, because I'll make sure of it. My breath caught as I looked up at him, his expression unreadable, but so certain it almost scared me. But if I go against them, my voice cracked, they'll destroy me. He shook his head, his jaw tightening. Not while I'm standing beside you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk toward me. "This isn't the only proof," he continued. "I've gathered documents, testimonies, everything we need. They think you're powerless, but they're about to see just how wrong they are." My hands hovered over the folder, shaking. The thought of confronting the same people who had controlled my life terrified me, but I felt something awaken deep inside, a small ember of strength I hadn't realized was there. I looked up at him, my eyes burning with unshed tears. "Why are you helping me?" I asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. "Because you were never alone," he said softly, "and because I made a promise to your parents that I'd protect you, no matter what it cost me." My breath faltered, the room spinning as his words settled like a storm inside me. The next evening arrived faster than I could prepare for. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I slipped into the simple black dress he had left for me, one that clung softly to my frame but felt heavier than armor. Every breath was shallow, as though my chest couldn't contain the storm inside. He waited for me at the bottom of the grand staircase, a figure of quiet strength in a perfectly tailored suit. The moment our eyes met, the noise of my thoughts dulled, replaced by the steady rhythm of his presence. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, his voice a lifeline. I wanted to say no. I wanted to run as far as possible from the mansion, from the table of faces that had humiliated me, from the truth that threatened to break me. But instead I swallowed hard and nodded. "I think so," I whispered, though my voice wavered. He stepped forward, offering me his arm. "You don't have to think," he said gently. "You just have to remember who you are." The letter and folder were tucked safely inside a leather case he carried, the weight of proof we would place before them. As we crossed the marble foyer together, I felt every gaze turned toward us, whispers rising like a tide of disbelief. I kept my chin high, even as my knees threatened to buckle. This was it. The dining hall doors loomed ahead, and beyond them waited the people who had stolen my life. He glanced down at me one last time, his voice low but sure. "No matter what happens in there," he said, "you're not walking in alone." The doors opened with a low creak, and every conversation inside the dining hall stopped abruptly. All eyes turned toward us as we stepped in, the weight of their stares like knives against my skin. I could see the CEO's sister at the far end of the table, her painted lips curling into a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. "So she's back," she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. This should be entertaining. My chest tightened, but I kept my chin lifted, forcing my trembling hands to stay at my sides. He guided me forward, his steady presence shielding me from their whispers. When we reached the head of the table, he set the leather case down with a deliberate thud that silenced the room completely. "We're not here for your entertainment," he said, his voice like steel. He opened the case and pulled out the letter first, placing it carefully on the table. "We're here for the truth." Confusion rippled through the room as he began laying out document after document, the evidence of years of lies and betrayal. Gasps erupted as they recognized signatures, forged transfers, the undeniable trail of theft. My heart pounded in my ears, my breath shallow as I watched their expressions shift from arrogance to fear. Finally, he turned to me and nodded, giving me the space to step forward. My knees trembled, but I took a deep breath and lifted my voice so everyone could hear. "You stole my life," I said, my voice steady despite the quake in my chest. "But tonight it ends." The silence that followed my words felt endless, a suffocating stillness where even the air seemed to wait for what would happen next. The CEO's sister rose abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her voice high with desperation. "She's lying. She's always been nothing, and nothing has changed." She reached for the documents on the table, but he stepped between us, his presence an unmovable wall. "Touch anything," he warned coldly, "and you'll regret it." She faltered, her hands trembling before she pulled them back, the fight draining from her eyes as the weight of the evidence became undeniable. One by one, the others lowered their gazes, their silence an admission of guilt. My knees wavered, but I held my ground, clutching the letter to my chest as if it were the heartbeat of my parents I could still feel. "This was never about your approval," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the tension like glass. "It's about taking back what was stolen, and I will." He stepped closer then, his hand hovering near mine, offering silent support without forcing it. My chest tightened with gratitude, with the strength I hadn't known I could feel. The CEO's sister's face crumpled, and she sank back into her chair, defeated. "You'll regret this," she whispered, but it lacked conviction. I looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes without fear. "No," I said firmly, my voice stronger than I ever thought it could be. "For the first time, I won't." And as he gently took my hand in his, the storm inside me settled. I was no longer invisible. I was finally seen, and I would never be erased again.